My name is Avery. I'm a 62-year-old housewife. 2 years ago, my husband, who I had been married to for many years, passed away suddenly due to an illness. Now, I live a modest life, managing the inheritance he left me. I have 2 sons, both of whom are married. When my eldest son, Henry, got married, he and his wife offered to live with me. I told them, I appreciate your concern, but I'm still fit and fine on my own. I don't want to be a burden to you newlyweds. But Henry insisted, I can't bear the thought of you being alone. As the eldest son, it's my responsibility to take care of you. Please don't worry about being a nuisance. And so, we ended up living together. Henry's wife, Rhea, is very young, 9 years younger than Henry, only 23. At first, I worried if such a young girl could handle being a wife, but she was the one Henry chose. I found no reason to object to their marriage, so I accepted it. When we decided to live together, I asked Henry, is Rhea okay with living with me? Won't a young girl like her dislike living with an old woman like me? Henry reassured me, saying, it's fine. Rhea is kind. She'll get along with you. Besides, having you around will help us with the housework. He was adamant about us living together. I couldn't find a reason to object after hearing that. Sure, I'm getting on in years, and it's too late to start worrying when something happens. Thinking that it'd be more reassuring than living alone, I gratefully accepted Henry's proposal. After we had been living together for a while, there was a time when I asked Rhea, sorry to ask, but could you bring in the laundry? I'm going out to get groceries for dinner. Up until then, I hadn't often asked her for anything, but that day I had unavoidable errands to run before shopping, so I decided to ask her. However, Rhea retorted, why do I have to do it? I'm busy right now. You should bring it in before you go, shouldn't you? She seemed occupied playing a game on her smartphone. Even before that, she hadn't helped with any household chores, but I chose not to say anything out of consideration. However, seeing her just lying there playing her game that day, I said a bit more firmly, if it's just a game, you can play it later, right? Could you please help out a bit? Rhea, looking annoyed, grumbled, you're always nagging. Whoever's free should do the chores, right? You could bring it in before shopping. You're really annoying. With a glare at me, she went to the balcony to bring in the laundry. I was taken aback by her rudeness, but I thought it wouldn't do any good to say anything more and upset her further, so I left the house as it was. After that day, Rhea began to harass me. Ignoring me became a daily occurrence. When she didn't like the food I cooked, she would say to Henry, I can't eat this. Hey, let's go out and eat. Just the 2 of us. And they would go out to eat, leaving me behind. Henry did try to consider my feelings, saying, think about Mom too. She went through all this trouble to cook. But when Rhea was in a bad mood, all he could do was say, sorry Mom. We're going to eat out today, and follow Rhea's orders. Rhea never did any housework, no matter how much I asked. Instead, she said, you're not working, right? Aren't you ashamed to rely on Henry for everything at your age? It's normal for you to do the chores, isn't it? She acted as if it was completely natural for me to do all the housework. Rhea accused me of not working, but she wasn't working either. She felt superior because she was supporting Henry, who was working. I hadn't told Rhea, but I wasn't unemployed. I had a little income from managing the apartment my husband left me. I also contributed to the household expenses, so I wasn't completely dependent on Henry. But Rhea seemed to think that because I wasn't working outside the home, I didn't have any income, and Henry was footing all the bills. Once, when I was cleaning, Rhea shouted at me, can't you clean a little quieter? That's noisy. I was just vacuuming normally, but Rhea was on a phone call and was complaining about me to the person on the other end, saying, hello, sorry about that. Yeah, it's Henry's mom. She's really noisy, isn't she? She should be able to do the housework quietly at this point. Even I was annoyed, and I told Henry about what had happened that day when he came home from work. You know, I'm not saying you have to do everything, but Rhea hasn't been helping at all with the housework. Not only that, but I got scolded just for vacuuming. It's normal to share chores, and I do my part, but I can't handle doing everything alone, especially when I get complaints, I told him. Henry replied, I'm sorry, I really am. I don't think Rhea means any harm. Maybe she was just in a bad mood today. I'll tell her to help out a bit more, so please cut her some slack today. But he didn't really take the matter seriously. Even so, I hoped that Henry would talk to Rhea, and I decided to watch how things unfolded without saying anything more. Half a year passed, and Rhea's attitude remained unchanged. She didn't even bother to pretend to help with the housework. I was utterly exhausted from managing all the chores for 3 people and constantly trying to accommodate Rhea. During this time, my second son, Lucas, happened to mention, "Mom, your birthday's coming up, right? Since Henry and Rhea will likely celebrate it on the day itself, why don't we celebrate it today? Renly also has a present for you, so let's go out for dinner." I accepted the invitation gladly. Lucas and his wife lived in an apartment about 30 minutes away from our house, so we didn't get to see each other often. Renly, Lucas's wife, was always kind and gentle, showing me a lot of care. When Lucas invited me, I replied without hesitation, "I'd love to, of course I'll go." That evening, after preparing dinner for Henry and Rhea, I joined Lucas and his family for dinner. They had reserved my favorite restaurant and surprised me with flowers and a gift bag for my birthday. It was a delightful evening, and I couldn't contain my happiness, saying, "Ah, this is so refreshing. It's been a long time since I've felt this happy." Moved by my words, Lucas asked, "Has something been bothering you with Henry? When you say it's been a while since you felt happy, it concerns me. Have things been tough for you lately?" Although I hadn't planned to complain, I explained that I was managing all the housework because Rhea wouldn't help, and how I had been scolded for being noisy and spoken to harshly. Lucas, exchanging glances with Renly, spoke up, "Mom, you don't have to endure this if it's difficult. You have income from the stocks and apartment rents Dad left behind, right? You're only staying with them because Henry wanted it that way. But if Rhea treats you badly and Henry doesn't support you, you shouldn't have to live like this. If it's hard for you to say it, I'll intervene." Renly added, "If you feel lonely living alone, we can live together. I love you very much, so please don't hesitate." Their words moved me deeply, and I felt tears welling up. I expressed my gratitude and decided to persevere a little longer, reassured by their support. "Thank you, but I'll keep trying. They're my precious family after all. I truly want to find harmony with Rhea," I replied. Returning home that night, I noticed the dishes they had used were still in the sink. With a sigh, I began to clean up but stopped myself, thinking, "I always do this. It's only fair they do it tomorrow morning." So, I left the dishes as they were and retired to bed. The next morning, as I prepared breakfast, Rhea came into the kitchen. While cooking, I greeted her, "Good morning, Rhea. I'll handle breakfast. Could you please wash the dishes from yesterday?" Rhea ignored my request and instead settled on the couch, engrossed in her smartphone. Frustration bubbled up within me at her dismissive attitude, and I couldn't help but raise my voice. "It's basic courtesy to clean up after yourself." In her usual manner, Rhea retorted, "I've told you countless times, isn't that your job, mom-in-law? You know the saying, 'He who does not work, neither shall he eat.' You eat every day, so you should do the housework." Henry hurried into the room upon hearing our exchange, looking concerned. "What's going on so early in the morning? Are you two arguing?" he asked, his brow furrowed in confusion. With a sigh, I explained to Henry, "I simply asked Rhea to wash the dishes from yesterday. I was just stating the obvious." Upon hearing my reply, Henry muttered, "Seriously, this early?" and headed to wash his face, clearly irritated. But I couldn't hold back any longer and snapped, "It's not just about this morning. Every single day, I'm the one doing all the housework. Everything, including yours. Do you realize how exhausting that is? At the very least, you could wash your own dishes." My outburst, rare for me, startled Henry. "I'm sorry, I'll take care of it," he said hastily, moving to start on the dishes. However, Rhea interjected, "Why should Henry, who works outside, have to do that? You depend on Henry, so it's your responsibility, mom-in-law." She stopped Henry's hands, clearly dissatisfied with the idea of him doing chores. Then she turned to me and said, "You're living off a pension like a pauper, causing trouble. Get out of this apartment." That was the last straw for me. Why should I leave my own home? "This house is in my name," I retorted to Rhea. Turning to Henry, I confessed my true feelings. "Rhea seems to have it all wrong, but you understand, Henry. It's you two who should leave. I can't bear living together anymore. I've reached my limit." Rhea looked visibly surprised and asked, "What do you mean? How can a jobless mother-in-law own a house? Aren't you relying on Henry?" I clarified, "I am the landlord of this apartment. I don't rent. This apartment belongs to me. When Henry's father passed away, he left me stocks, apartments, and land. I manage these assets and generate enough income to support myself. I've never depended on Henry financially. Even after we started living together, I cover most of the utilities and food expenses. Rhea was speechless, turning to Henry for confirmation. So we've been living without spending much money, she queried. Henry simply nodded in response. I chimed in, while Henry may have wanted to provide for you, Rhea, he couldn't possibly manage all aspects of my financial life, taking you out to eat, shopping, and such. Henry himself isn't earning that much yet. At that moment, Rhea seemed to grasp the seriousness of the situation. Her demeanor changed, her face paling as she said, I'm sorry, mother-in-law. I didn't realize, and I've been disrespectful. Please forgive me. Realizing that her comfortable living arrangement could be at risk if we parted ways, Rhea continued to apologize repeatedly in a flustered manner. Understanding their realization, I reassured them, I'm not saying I will forgive you. We're family after all. But continuing to live together isn't feasible. We need to address this. You both should find a place to rent and live on your own. Henry reacted urgently to my suggestion. I worry about you, Mom. From now on, Rhea and I will pitch in with the housework. I just don't want you to be alone. However, I reassured him, I'll be fine. If you're that concerned, I can stay with Lucas and his family. They offered when we went out for dinner recently, knowing I might be uneasy about living alone. Initially, I wanted to give it more time living with you two, but now I see it's not feasible. It might inconvenience Lucas, but I'll be closer to them. Henry seemed to grasp my resolve, simply saying, I understand, without further comment. In contrast, Rhea retorted, so you're abandoning us even though we've been taking care of you. Her tone blamed me. Recognizing arguing would be fruitless, I chose not to respond. Within a month, Henry and Rhea secured a new place and moved out. Given their budget, they could only afford an older, smaller apartment. Rhea, who had never worked previously, reportedly took up a part-time job to make ends meet. Henry confided that Rhea frequently complained about managing household chores in her job. Their life seemed fraught with continuous arguments, and Henry appeared utterly exhausted. Henry continued to reach out, pleading, if only you would forgive us, we want to live together again. Yet I have firmly decided not to revisit that chapter of my life. After Henry and Rhea moved out, I relocated to Lucas's home. Despite my insistence that they needed to accommodate me, Lucas expressed, having you here really helps, Mom. Renly also wants you to stay. She's eager to learn your cooking. Thus, we made the decision to live together. Since then, Lucas and Renly have assured me, feel free to speak up if something bothers you. We'll manage chores together, ensuring we don't inconvenience each other. Nowadays, I spend my time cooking alongside Renly, pursuing my hobbies, and simply enjoying a fulfilling life. I am genuinely content. Going forward, I strive to maintain this happiness without compromise.
Alright, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was. As the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. "Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize." Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. "What kind of training are you giving your subordinates?" Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed, I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their inn. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry." Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." "Mike, what have you done?" Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.